Thank you. Quite a lot there to think about. And what I want to pick up now is this human story that we tell ourselves so far, this presumption of human dominance, the presumption of human exceptionalism, the presumption of never-ending economic growth. Now that has repercussions. There are direct mathematical realities when you think about continuous material growth. Now let's hover on that for a minute. Let's actually think what that actually means, because we often don't think in those terms. Let's take the figure 3% growth per year. That seems to be what economists really think is the average we should be having for the world in terms of our economic growth. 3% economic growth a year doesn't sound much. That gives a doubling time of less than 25 years. So every 25 years, the size of your economy doubles. The size of the economy today is twice the size that it was in 1995. So we're using twice, if resource use is linked to the size of the economy, we are using twice as many resources now as we were in 1995. That's quite staggering, isn't it? But that's not the shocking statistic. The shocking statistic is the way doubling works. Between 1995 and today, we have used as many resources as we did in the entire history of the human race before 1995. That's how exponential growth works. And we will do the same again before 2045. So between now and 2045, we will use as many resources as we did in the entire history of the human race before today. Now, there could be some good news in that what we all rely on is decoupling. So we get economic growth, which doesn't rely on increased resource use. And this does seem to be happening in some countries. But I'm very suspicious that actually there doesn't seem to be what's happening globally. And I think actually what's happening is we're exporting our problems. Britain seems to be achieving that, for example. I think we're exporting our problems to other countries, importing the resources and the manufactured goods from other countries. Overall, this is how the doubling seems to be work. We are using resources and creating pollution at an ever-increasing rate, and this is mindless. We can't carry on like this. Another good figures, we talked about climate breakdown. We signed the Framework Convention on Climate Change in 1992. Great. And we were going to solve climate change in 1992. Well, what happened? Since 1992, we have emitted more carbon dioxide than the entire history of the human race before 1992. We haven't done it, as Paul showed with those graphs. And this has inevitable impacts on Earth systems. It's not just a nice to have, it's not just a pity, it's not just the lack of a few animals that some animal huggers might like. It has an impact on Earth systems. We've heard about the climate emergency. We're in an ecological emergency as well. The Intergovernment Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, a name that rolls off the tongue, that estimates that there are 1 million species at risk of extinction. I think we only know about 10 million species, so that's a lot. A lot of scientists now think we're at the beginning of the Earth's 6th mass extinction. The last one saw off the dinosaurs. Now that's how big the size of the crisis is today. Some statistics, there's loads of statistics we could quote, but let's look at the mass, the volume, the weight of all the mammals on Earth. So take all the mammals on Earth. 96% of the mammals, 96% of the biomass of mammals on Earth are either humans or are livestock. Only 4% is everything else. Only 4% for all the elephants, all the kangaroos, all the badgers, all the mice. Everything else is either humans or are livestock. That's how much we're dominating the planet. Think about insects. Insect populations around the globe have crashed in the last 20 or 30 years. One study in Germany showed 75% reduction in biomass of insects, and that was in protected areas. Apparently there's a forest where the work was done in Costa Rica, 90% reduction. So it's seeing all these problems. And it doesn't, as I said, it's not just a shame. This is affecting Earth systems. We are losing soil. We are losing the productive capacity of the soil. That soil is going down rivers and ending up in the sea, where it's causing dead zones, where large areas of the sea are no longer productive because of this. We have crises when it comes to pollination. There are now regions in China where farmers are having to hand pollinate crops because there's no insects. And of course, we're seeing pandemic emergence, another sign of the breakdown of our relationship with nature. We are part of nature. We rely 100% on Earth systems. We cannot pretend otherwise. It's deluded to pretend otherwise. Think of carbon dioxide. Before life evolved, the Earth's atmosphere was at least 90% carbon dioxide. 2 billion years ago, 90% carbon dioxide. Today, it should be 0.03%. And that's maintained at that level by life and nothing else. Life maintains these sorts of conditions. It's the same with oxygen. As far as we know, there's no other free oxygen on planets in the known universe. It's only here. water cycling, nutrient cycling, all these sorts of things, they are delivered by life, and we rely entirely on that. So we need a new story. As Paul has said, we need to change. We need to do something differently. Quite often this is presented as stopping stuff or being hair shirt or something, but it's very, very different. This period in our history, in our human history, is aberrant. We think of ourselves as uniquely qualified to exploit and take, monetize nature and convert it into something for ourselves and never mind the consequences. That simply doesn't work. Last time we looked, the earth was round, it's finite. We can't have an infinite economic system based on a finite system. So we need to move our human story from one of exploitation, from one of human dominance, human exceptionalism, to one which is based on regeneration. It's too late even to talk about sustainability. We need to talk about rebuilding, regenerating, a regenerative relationship with nature. Now, obviously, in a few minutes, we can't say what that actually means, but let's think of just a few kind of key words. I like the subject of rewilding. I've been playing with it for donkey's years, but the subject of rewilding is really grabbing the imagination now, I think, to rebuild, to put back those natural processes that we've been destroying for the last 10,000 years, put some of those back. Nature is vibrant. Nature can actually restore itself given the chance. There are cases in Sussex. There are examples in Sussex. The chair mentioned the Nep estate, where rewilding is enabling nature to blossom and rebuild itself. We have another example off the coast in Sussex, along by Worthing, where we're regenerating or trying to regenerate kelp forests. Kelp forest, a natural system which locks up carbon 40 times as fast as terrestrial forests. So nature can regenerate itself if we actually give it the chance. So rewilding is one of those sorts of principles that we need to think about. Secondly, regenerative agriculture. We think of agriculture as perhaps being very damaging, which it has tended to be, but it can be incredibly building as well. And the whole principle of agriculture, which regenerates soils, doesn't mine soils, agriculture which brings back biodiversity rather than degrades it, which rebuilds hydrological systems, which brings back the pollinators. That is all possible, and that is being done all over the world, including in Sussex. So turning the corner, thinking about things which are regenerative rather than damaging. And again, as Paul said, we need an economy that supports this. We cannot just have an economy which relies on capitalizing or monetizing nature and using it for some temporary, rather trite human benefit. We need to change our economy around. We need to actually refocus our economy, rewrite the economic compass. And it's not just a weird ecologist like me that says that. Professor Dasgupta, a Cambridge professor of economics, contracted by the government's Treasury Department, has said exactly the same thing. Our economic compass is faulty. We need to rewrite it. We need to value in natural capital, and in a realistic way, rather than the way it's sometimes presented. Natural capital is the dominant form of capital. Everything else relies on that. We can't trade it. We can't trade it away. A lot of these things are a given. We can't just get rid of it. So natural capital, valuing natural capital properly, valuing it for its proper services, and growing natural capital is something that a new economy will have to do. So we need to change. We need to change from the picture of ourselves as consumers. We can't judge ourselves by the size of our flat screen telly or how shiny our car is. We need to value ourselves in other ways. We need to become citizens again, not takers, but contributors, contributing to society, not just taking from it. In practice, when you analyze people's brains, they get more pleasure from actually contributing than they do from receiving. So it's not just about taking, it's not just about exploiting, it's not just about human exceptionalism, it's about becoming a citizen, becoming a contributor to society. And again, as Paul said, I think the pandemic has really opened this up in people. According to the horror movies, we should have all turned into flesh-eating monsters when we were under pressure. That's not what happened. Overall, we turned into fine citizens. I know there are exceptions, but they were notable because they are exceptions. Around the world, people turned back into fine citizens, helping each other out. And in particular, I think what happened was the way we applied this locally. I think local actions was the key thing. And I want to end now with a quote. And the quote is, you make a living out of what you get, but you make a life out of what you give. Now, which radical environmentalist said that? It was Sir Winston Churchill. I now hand back to Kath. Thank you.